Albania is a record breaker, but not with the kind of records any country would try to achieve. For example, it's the poorest country in Europe with the lowest paid literate workforce in the world. One look at the main square of Tirana, and no one would dispute a claim for the least amount of motorized traffic in any European capital. Here, horsepower means exactly what it says. If they can't challenge Holland for the largest number of bicycles, they may be able to get ahead of the Dutch on the most creative way to take a baby for an outing. And if the Guinness Book of Records had a category for the worst equipped street cleaner, this Albanian lady would be the winner hands down. Just look at that. Where else could a 20th century nation in Europe claim a one-man road repair operation like this? And here's the contestant for the most ancient working farm tractor. And what's this? A world record attempt at the train carrying most people? But Albania's most startling statistics are no laughing matter. This beautiful and potentially fertile country was destined to become one of Europe's worst statistics after the Stalinist dictator Enver Hoxha became president in 1944. Western democracy was considered decadent from the beginning. Russia was written off when it reversed from hardline Stalinism. Even Chinese communists fell from favor by easing away from the excesses of Mao Zedong. So Albania was virtually cut off from the rest of the world. Its people trapped in a totalitarian prison. To keep it that way, the army manned 1 million reinforced concrete bunkers. The purpose was not only to protect the nation from outsiders, but to prevent their own people from leaving. When Hoxha died in 1985, the equality he proclaimed for his subjects starkly contrasted his own record-breaking lifestyle.
The dictator's home is now closed. Its guards were the only people who objected to us filming whatever we liked. They may also have found it hard to accept an amazing exhibition that we discovered, where photographs of the old dictator were superimposed with others and satirical captions added. It was the most popular attraction in Tirana. People paid to file by and laugh at such pictures as the ample form of the old dictator sitting on the bent shoulders of a skinny peasant and saying, "In Albania, everyone is equal, under me." As I talked to the man behind this unusual expression of newly acquired freedom, I commented that if he'd tried this last year, he would have been arrested. He replied that less than a year ago, he would certainly have been imprisoned and maybe shot.
As communist dictators toppled during the late 80s, Hoxha's successors found it increasingly difficult to hold back the sweeping tides of change across Eastern Europe. But in the spring of 1991, Albania followed the lead of neighboring nations and held its first multi-party elections. But the newly elected government of national unity was able to do little to improve the low quality of life. Hoxha's legacy of economic disaster is harder to remove than his statue, which angry crowds tore down in Tirana's main square. Stalin's statue has also gone, and Stalinism is dead. But nothing substantial has taken its place, and the nation teeters between democracy and anarchy. When the country opened to foreigners, one of the first to take up residence in Tirana was a lady from Holland who had already learned the language. Her name, Gazina Blau.
I started learning the language in about 83 or 84, a self-study. I had some good books. And then last year when I had so many refugees out in Sicily, I spoke Albanian all the time, so that helped me.
In the summer of 1991, she came to live in Tirana. Her compassionate concern and action for their people quickly gained her the confidence and respect of government leaders.
well, we asked him if he could open up an office for the coordination of this kind of relief work, and they allowed me to be the representative.
During their first winter of freedom, Albanians probably suffered more than any other Eastern European nation from the effects of economic failure. Food shortages became acute. People panicked. During a 2-week period before Christmas, more than 40 were killed in food riots.
When I flew into Tirana Airport, I was surprised to see one of Britain's best-known broadcasters, David Jacobs. He told me he'd come to see the situation for himself. A few days later, we compared notes. David, I must say that when I came into Tirana Airport, it was nice to see a familiar face there. So now that you've seen something of the situation here, what is your reaction to it?
Well, I'm actually quite startled. I have never been to a country like this before. I have never been into a time warp before. This country closed down 45 years ago. They have missed out on so much. They've missed out on medical education, on all the scientific advances. They've missed out on business management, on so many things. But I've found people who are so backward, so poor. I've never been to a country where it is impossible to buy anything. You can't even get a toothbrush or toothpaste. There is nothing in the shops. The cupboard, no, not just the cupboard is bare, the country is bare.
The delivery of one ambulance took us through incredibly beautiful countryside to a small hospital serving a widely scattered population of about 10,000 people. It was one of literally dozens of hospitals and clinics with no means of transporting the sick. No wonder there was such an enthusiastic crowd to see the arrival of the ambulance.
And I've seen for a very long time. I mean, they just are loving. And also, there are lots of them. I asked if they needed any help from volunteer nurses and doctors. And I said, no, we've got plenty. What we need is to upgrade our doctors and nurses with modern technology, to show them what they can now do with the help of modern medicines, about which they know very, very little. And I think that it's such a small country that it's manageable to help, that we could actually do something about Albania.
And you plan to do that now?
Well, I can do what I can.
There was one denial of freedom which made Albania totally different from any other European state. Other communist regimes suppressed religion, but the Albanian dictator claimed to totally abolish it. Spiritual starvation became state policy as churches, mosques and synagogues were closed, destroyed, or put to other uses. State.
It was considered that religion damages the society. This was what happened more or less in all the communist countries, but it was more emphasized in Albania.
Are you a Christian?
No, I'm a Muslim, because we have had no knowledge about the religion at all.
A government minister told me that suppression of religion was like holding down a spring which has now been released.
Tirana is one of the bleakest capital cities in the world. It is plain and dull. A city without much of a soul despite the socialist sloganeering. Statues of Stalin and Lenin dominate the main squares and parks, symbols of Albania's conservative brand of communism. The two main boulevards feature only a few large buildings, most of them offices for the Communist Party. The people dress simply and they live simply. Outside of work, there is little else to do. To a Westerner, Tirana is a pedestrian's paradise. There are almost no cars, and the bicycle is the biggest private luxury on wheels. But Albania is changing and advancing, and it is outside the capital where you get the feel of it. A 4-day bumpy ride in a Chinese minibus was a revealing experience. This country was once the poorest backwater of Europe. Now it produces enough to eat for its 2 million people. Almost every square inch of this mountainous land is being cultivated. One common feature of the landscape was the multitude of party slogans. They praised the Communist Party and its man in charge, Enver Hoxha. Hoxha takes all the credit for bringing Albania into the 20th century, and he is not shy about it. Already he has immortalized himself in the National Museum of Gjirokastër, the town where he was born. But in his country's development, Hoxha needs help from his friends, his only friends for that matter, the Chinese. The ties are close. A recent visit by a music and dance theater from Peking got a warm reception in Tirana. Though Albanian officials permitted the filming of this program, they won't allow Westerners to take pictures of the hundreds of Chinese working there as advisors or technicians. However, the signs of Chinese presence and help are everywhere. In the modern Mao Zedong textile plant in Berat, everything was imported from China, including the fuse boxes and the light bulbs. The factory employs more than 6,000 workers, mostly women. It covers all of Albania's textile needs and exports blankets and carpets to Eastern Europe.
Socialist Albania in its 40th anniversary. These are not ordinary years from the millennia-year-long history of a people which passed by leaving no traces. Socialism transformed Albania, where our free and happy people are living by the sweat of their brow. 4 decades make an epoch for the wonderful transformations they brought about in the life of these people. Truly enough, the Albanian people call these years the years of real revival. In the first years, 1946 to 1948, the voluntary undertakings restored the ruins of war. Seaports, auto routes were rebuilt, the electric stations, the telephone network, the oil wells and extracting and processing industry started to function. To this period belongs also the land reform, the first revolution in the socio-economic relations in the countryside, which ended throughout Albania on the 17th of November 1946. At present, the Albanian people are living and working for the complete construction of the socialist society. It is the deed of the working masses led by the party. The newly molded man rises above all successes. He is the initiator of the great nationwide movements. Steel production of Albanian brand gave a new impetus to the engineering industry and prepared the ground for the setting up of a new branch, the machine building industry, which is the heart of socialist industrialization.